And normally, I would like to start with a short breathing exercise, meditations, watching the breath mindfully for a few moments to quiet our mind and to be in the moment. And we can try to generate a good intention, motivation for being here. We can think by us coming here together with a good heart intentions and giving our precious time to listen and to reflect and contemplate on whatever we listen to, and to engage in discussions, sharing. Due to all of this, may it become cause and conditions to us to cultivate a strong courageous and confidence, self-confidence. So that we can continue to keep our kindness, to be kind and positive, even in the most difficult, challenging times. May it cause and conditions to not to become easily discouraged, courage, and easily give up, and to become too negative in the face of painful and difficult situations. no matter how bad it is, may we never lose our humanity, feeling of humanity, love and compassion. Instead, may we be able to improve and develop more of love, compassion, especially during the most difficult time. And towards most difficult people, sentient beings. And may it be causing conditions to achieve our highest potential, the fully awakened state. So we can be not only just benefit, but greatest help and benefit. And not only towards only certain sentient beings, but towards each and every sentient beings equally. Okay. So maybe we can recite the refuge and Bodhicitta prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chödang Sangye Sonam Changju Bhata Dani Dagi Sheshe Gibe Sonam Yola Penje Sangye Ludup Sangye Chödang Sangye Sonam Changju Bhata Dani Dagi Sheshe Gibe Sonam Yola Penje Sangye Ludup. So I think so the topic is, how to keep and remain positive and kind, even in most difficult and challenging time. And we discussed a little bit last week. I think many of you were there, and maybe some of you were not there last week, but we discussed on that topic a little bit last week. First of all, whether any situations, event, circumstances, whether it become painful or not painful, whether it become difficult or not difficult, whether it become obstacle and challenge, or whether it become you know, or whether it become opportunity, it depends on our mind. It depends on our mind, our perceptions, our interpretations of our mind, So everything depends on our mind's interpretation, projections, and the way our mind view that particular situation, circumstances, and very much depend on that. So whether that particular situations, events, circumstances become cause of pain and suffering, or whether it become cause of happiness, joy, it depends on our state of mind, how we interpreted that situation, and how we view that, and how we project that situations. Once we understand that, once we have a really deep understanding of that, then, we are in charge of our own experience. Then we become aware in charge of our experience. On the other hand, if it's depending on others, then we are no more in charge of our own experience. It depends on others. It depends on others' actions, behavior, attitude, situation, circumstance, external. And when that becomes, then we have no more control. We become under the control of other circumstances. But once we are able to understand that, actually is because of my mind, because of my interpretation, because of the way I see the situation, the way that I view the situations, the way I project that is why I'm experiencing, either as cause of suffering or cause of happiness, or whether it is as an obstacle or as an opportunity, or as a difficult and challenging, or it as a something positive, meaningful, So once we understand it more depend on that, and then because we have the ability and we have the certain control of our mind, where we can change our view, where we can change our perceptions, where we can change our projections of the situation. By changing that, we can change the experience. We can change our experience in relation to that. And, isn't that such a, positive? Isn't that such a relief? That means we can be charged of our own experience in our life, instead of someone being in charge of our experience. So that is the fundamental Buddha's teachings. Everything, all different experiences we experience is due to our own mind, due to our own perceptions. And that is very, very fundamental and And that is very, very important, fundamental understanding. For someone who might feel is the most painful, most difficult, most challenging event or situations, for another being in same situation, in same event and same that, even though they are experiencing same thing, but due to their different approach of their mind, they can have a different feeling of that situation and different experience of that. I think I shared some stories from last week with His Holiness, because the way he view and see things, positively, and so therefore, it doesn't become as painful as it would have been to us if we are unable to see the situation positively the way he see it. For example, one of the often experiences he shared very often in public is, he shared about what happened to him and Tibetan people in 1959. Their country was occupied. He had to escape for his life. Since then, he had become a refugee, in another country with a different language, different cultures, different, food, everything different. Not much similarity, like that. And for last, all of that, but he's never bitter about that. Never bitter about that. He never talked. You can never feel and hear bitterness about that. Imagines when you lose everything, leaving everything behind, with such a danger where his life can be in, lose his life anytime before he was able to reach in India. Went through all this and continue to experience, all these kind of allegations, accusations, even now, every time. Something wrong in Tibet is Dalai Lama. He is the blame, because of such a strong suppressions. Sometimes people are unhappy and there is protest and peaceful protest. And they hand with such a force. And anything that things happens when there is a instant of protest, frustration by the people, even is one people or group, immediately the government will say it's all by Dalai Lama. He continued to get all the blame. He continued to be accused, even though he doesn't, never encouraged to be violent, never encouraged to disrespect. There was advice, even, like one time, Xi Jinping, the president of China, came to India, and there was some protests, kind of peaceful protests with black flags and something like that, And again, it is those Tibetan youth, His Holiness, and in private youth, he gave advice, even though we might not agree with their policies and we have to fight for justice and all of that. But at the same time, we have to respect the president because he is a president of one big country. So that is how much he is not in public, but he is in private for very his people. That is someone like him, you know. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is you don't see any bitterness, and the way we will feel if that happens to us or our families, friends. The feeling of bitterness, the feeling of anger, frustrations, the feeling of betrayal, the feeling of being bullied, all of that, and becoming bitter, upset, and angry, and losing sense of compassion and kindness. But he never did that. And because one of the things is, he viewed that way and he shared. He says, personally, he says, if he look personally for himself, he's not talking about the whole every Tibetans, but he's saying personally for himself. If he look back to his life, what has happened, there are a lot of those, unfortunate circumstances, situation that happens, that he had to escape, leave, and refugee and all of that. But at the same time, when he looked from another perspective, from another point of view, he said that might have been the good things that happened to him. That is, he felt that and he shared that. And he said because that he had to be a refugee, he had to leave the Tibet, he has the opportunity to travel and meet so many different people, different cultures, different religions. And because of all of that, he said it has helped him to develop even better, greater, to understand different people from different countries, different culture from all over the world, different language, different religious, spiritual path. And that has helped him a lot. And because of all of that, he is able to share, his wisdom, his knowledge, his message on love, kindness, non-violence, humanity, harmony, religious harmony, climate, all of those, equality, all of that, and able to reach so many millions of people. He said if he was in Tibet, he will not be able to reach as many audience as he are able to reach now. If that didn't happen, 1951 didn't happen, if he was still in Tibet, he might not have this all opportunity that he got now, and all his experience. And also one of the reasons, if you really look, one of the reasons why so many people are touched by his message, okay? Not only Buddhists, non-Buddhists, so many different peoples have been very much touched by his message because he went through all those challenges, difficult situations, and he overcame that challenges and still remain without being bitterness, but still very positive and very kind and compassionate. And so it is not just his speech and message, but it's his, he lived that. He lived that. And people can see and can feel that. And therefore, it really touched their heart. And therefore, he's able to be so much help and benefit to so many people in that way. Regardless of different spiritual path, regardless of different beliefs, regardless of believer, non-believer, he has touched so many people's life through his wisdom, his knowledge, his message. And not only that, because despite him going through all this most difficult, challenging, but he never allowed that to be cause of so much pain to himself, emotionally pain. He didn't allow it to be cause of bitterness and frustrations and anger and so forth. And the one way, the reason that he is able to do is because he saw there's something positive in that, and he focused his mind on seeing the positiveness. A lot of time we only focus on the negative side. Do you get it? Sometimes there is both positive side and negative side. Sometimes there is more positive side, sometimes there is more negative side, sometimes there might be equal. Those level can, but what happens to us when something bad happens to us, we only focus on the negative side. And then when you only focus on your negative side, even the negativity is small at the very beginning, because you focus on that, and with the time it becomes bigger and bigger in your mind. Actually, it hasn't become bigger, but in your mind, you started to feel it is becoming bigger and bigger because you have been focusing too much on that. So, on the other hand, if we try to see why there is, something that is not great, but also there is some positive. And if you focus your mind, and if you just try to focus on that, and that can help you to uplift your mind and to be positive. So it's all depend on our mind, to where we focus our mind. For example, in the painting, there is a black, white. If you just focus on the black, and slowly the whole canvas will look like black with the time. If you just look on the white side, then after some time it will look more white. So it's all on, and so the key is to learn to see the positive side and focus on that. And that is, one of the things, His Holiness, while he understands the damage, the Chinese had done to the culture, Tibetan cultures, Tibetan spiritual path, how much people lost their life, so many, how all the monasteries and so many were destroyed, how much all the mines were explored and taking all of that. But he doesn't only just focus on that. A lot of other people will just focus on that. Only talk about that, only think about that. And when you only think about that, when you only talk about that, there's nothing positive you see in that. And so you all see is negative. And so then when you all see this negative, slowly, it builds anger, bitterness, and all of those negative emotions. But while he understands that is happening, while he feel that, but also he focused on the positive side. He mentions, when he was interviewed, even though they did that, at the same time, there are a lot of other development the Chinese government has done. Build all this airport, build all this road that was not there before. And so it's almost like sometimes he's defending the Chinese government, where the rest of others are trying to say how much damage they have done, all this bad, but then he point out also some of the good things they did. And I think that's the way to see things, because it's not all that. Definitely, they have helped to develop a lot of infrastructure which was not there before. Electricity, as much they have destroyed so much, but at the same time they have some. If you try to compare them, then they have done much more damage than what they have, good things they have done. There's no comparison in that. But at the same time, you cannot deny and you cannot kind of let go of seeing that positive, a little bit of the good things, that positive things that has happened. And so if you see that positive, you don't become, again, same thing. The thing is that then you don't become so bitter and angry and, feel so much pain, suffering, because, it's not 100% bad, There are some part of that are positive and good. And so it's all, all learning to see, view, learning, practicing, training our mind to view and see that side. And so if you see that, then, you will not be as hopeless and as negative, even most challenging. Instead, you can still be positive. You can still be able to give kindness, and that is where His Holiness, as mentioned, he feel more compassionate to them than others, the Chinese government officials, So, and we can also learn. This is how His Holiness trained his mind, how he see, and that's how he is able to keep his mind so positive, so cheerful, so happy, despite all so much challenges. Who has smiled, genuine smile that come from his heart all the time. When you are around him, your energies become positive, cheerful, joyful. You can, his energy bifurcated. People just around them just feel that energy. That is how it is, But if you really see what he went through, what he went through, he should be very bitter, very unhappy, very angry person. But no, But why? Because he was able to train his mind to see that way. And so do we have the same potential if we train our mind. If we decide to train our mind to do that way, we can be like him. And our challenges, sometimes nothing compared to all the challenges he went through and that he continued to go through. And also, of course, I'm using his own Dalai Lama's kind of example, but there's so many beings like that in the world. Desmond Tutu, who was very close to His Holiness, he's similar like that. He himself faced similar situation, lot of adversity, and also he himself is very kind of joyful, kind, compassionate, forgiving, all of that, Same with, so many others, great, leaders, Mahatma Gandhi was one of those examples, and so, so we all have that to transform something painful, difficult, challenging into a strength. They are able to transform those challenges, difficult obstacles, painful experience into their strength. They made it that strength. And we all have that also, that the ability, if we choose to be that, if we make effort to do that, we also have the potential to transform all these challenging, painful experiences into something strength, something positive. Another example His Holiness often share is, losing of his teacher, his senior tutors with whom he grew up, since I think he was 4 or 5, where that he was under their care, so he said, he always relied on him, he was like not only teachers, father figure, mother figures, everything that he feel like that when he need any help, if he need any guidance where he can rely on, it's like a big mountains on behind him, And when he lost that, he said, he felt sad and great loss. He felt even greater loss than when he lost his mom, And of course, His Holiness had very strong also connection with his mom, and he always says the first compassion he learned is from his mom, the teacher of compassion and kindness is the first teacher is his mom, because his mom was so loving and caring persons. So even though he had that connection, but because he spent most of, and so when Ling Rinpoche, when he lose, he felt like, he lost something that where he always felt there is someone behind him that we can rely on, depend on, anytime he has any challenges, difficulties, that's gone away. But he turned that loss into the strength. Then he began to say, now since I don't have anyone to depend on when I have any challenges, difficulties, since that is gone, so there is no one, someone I can rely on, depend on, therefore I have to be more stronger, therefore I have to try to, take care of myself even more, take in charge even more, and so that's what he did. So he transformed that great loss into a strength. And that was again another, that was when he was asked, questions, I think he had given that quite a few times, but in certain cautions about asking, how to deal when we lose someone very close in our life, someone very dear and close to us. How can we deal? Then he shared his own stories. That is how he deal. That is how he dealt himself, and he also felt a great loss when he lost it. But then he didn't allow that great loss to, overwhelm him, but instead he transformed that in something, internal strength, and to work harder, and to be able to stand on yourself, to work harder, to be able to stand on yourself, because now there's no one whom you can rely on and depend on that you had before. And so therefore, and so these are such a, inspiring, great example, inspiring, and those are great teachings, instructions, very profound teachings, instructions, that came through their experience, direct experience, and again, that's one thing, whether we allow those challenges, great loss, pain, suffering, whether we allow it to become more weak ourselves and become more self-destructive by becoming very down, low, depressing, negative, or we have choice not to allow that, but to turn that something most painful, great loss, most challenging, into cause something of strength, to turn it into something more strength, and yeah. And something strength and something positive, and I think, even in my father's case, I think, that is how I found, and I'm very happy that he was able to do that, 30, 40 years, after working so hard and everything, he lost everything. He lost everything like that, after working so hard, 20, 30 years. And, he turned that great loss, that, everything that he had lost, he turned that into something positive, to devote himself to become more spiritual and totally dedicating in spiritual. After that, he has come a little bit of kind of renunciations, felt like samsara is kind of meaningless. You run after all these things, money, wealth, everything. You work so hard, everything at the end, it's gone like that. For what? So he got a little bit of that kind of renunciation, and not only just a little bit. Sometimes we have that renunciation mind for a couple of minutes, Sometimes for a few hours, or a few days. Sometimes it could last one week. If it lasts 1 month, it's good, or 1 year, But then it goes away, We feel, samsara, all this meaningless, what is point of that? Maybe I should be focusing more on my spiritual path. I should give more energy, more time to that. But then slowly, slowly we lose that. And then I can go back to our normal, kind of back to chasing after all these things. But in my case, my father, he had that a little bit of that experience because of that situation, and then he really followed it, and the rest of his life, he fully kind of dedicated. And I think we all are so happy, all the children and everyone's so happy for him, for him to be able to do that. And I've also seen other people in similar situations within our community, So instead of being bitter and angry and upset and, beating yourself or being upset with the others for blaming them for your situations and all of that, and become self-destructive, but instead they transform into something positive and something that to turn themselves to be more spiritual and dedicate their life and the more spiritual. And so again, those are some of experiences that that I have seen, I have noticed, and I rejoice for those who have able to do that, and very happy. So those are like kind of how different people, and in some cases, people will be very devastated when you lose everything that you have. They can be so mentally, emotionally down, depressed, so bitter, so angry, so upset. Probably some people, they might not be able to re-establish their life and come out of that, and because they become so negative and their mind goes so down and down and down, and again, same situation happens, but again, it's the same situations, but it's how you deal with that, and how you can transform, how you can direct your life due to that circumstances, due to that situation, challenges. You can direct your life and your mind towards something positive, or you can direct that, because of that, your mind towards something negative. And whether your life become more positive or negative, more unhappy or more happy, is all up to the individuals, how they are willing, how they deal with that, how they deal with that, how they deal with that. So it's not the situation itself that made someone to be self-destructive and someone to be much more on a better, positive and better path. Is the way they look at the situation, the way they look at situation, and the way they decided to kind of, take the direction in whatever, and so it is all in our mind, It's all our mind. Same situation, for some people, it makes them even more stronger. Such difficult, challenging, painful experience make them even more stronger, make them even more compassionate, make them even be more, understanding and more kind to others. On the other hand, for some people, you know, it makes them very weak. You know, it makes them very weak, make them very bitter, very angry. So again, you know, how did that same situation or similar situation affect us so differently? Because due to their mental state, how they deal with that, whether they deal with more positively or whether they deal with more negatively, you know. So it's all in our mind, you know, how with what kind of mind, what kind of attitude, what kind of view, what kind of perceptions we deal with that situation, that makes the difference. That makes the difference. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, it's important, because a lot of time we always think it is the situation that made me bitter, unhappy, angry. That is why I'm angry. That's why I'm bitter. You know, that is I'm frustrated. You know, that is why I'm so depressed. That is why my mind is so low. That is not 100% absolutely correct. Yes, there is some circumstances, but if we have looked at situations with a different attitude, with a different view, a different point, we might not have to, we don't have to be bitter, so angry, so bitter, so depressed, so unhappy. We don't have to be that because of that situation. We don't have to be that. Hmm? So therefore, believing and thinking it is just because of the situation, that's why who I am, and that's why I'm with that emotion, that's not absolutely always correct, you know, always correct. Not 100% true, you know, it's not, you know, because of the way we handle with our particular state of mind. That is why we end up in that. You know, even with that kind of very challenging, painful situation, we can still end up being positive, kind, compassionate, you know, hopeful, joyful. One can still be that. One can still end up being that if we train. So, so that is the. And then I want to kind of, you know, touch on. I think last time at the end of our class, you know, when we opened for the discussion, questions, answer, you know, how different individuals find some kind of hope, and even in difficult challenging situation, how you can find hope by. And I think, as Jackie mentioned about for her, you know, by seeing the impermanent, and I think again is true, you know. Nothing, all conditions, situations, objects, phenomena, things are bound to change. They cannot be same all the time. All condition, phenomena, bound to change, cannot remain same. Even though sometimes when you are in the middle of the situation itself, it feels like it will never change, isn't it? It feels like it will never change. If someone says, "Oh, it will change," you will feel upset, angry. You know, you don't understand. You have no idea what you are talking about. You know. But if we really see it, you know, that's a very nature. Whether you want to see change or you don't want to see change, whether you believe, not believe, that doesn't matter, because it is a condition phenomenon. Therefore, the nature of condition phenomena is changing. It will change. Not only it will change, the change has already started. That very moment, the change has already started. Because it changed moment by moment, second by second. Sometimes we might not feel the change immediately because change is happening on a more subtle level. And then as the change happens on more subtle level, and then after time with that many subtle, then it becomes more gross, and then we can see and we can feel it. And then we say, oh, change is happening because it has become quite evident and quite gross, where we can see and feel it. But that, to reach that point, it has already, is like, when you wake up morning, you see the half of full of bucket of water. And you see, oh, it's filled. The bucket is filled with water. But it started with one drop. When you see few drop, you don't see it's full of filled. It's simply nothing's happening. But that half of full started with one drop. And many drop adds, and then it fill, and then you can see, oh, there's a lot of water. And that is how it is. So similarly, the change has, and so recognizing and being aware, the whatever situations that we are going through, whatever challenging, difficult situation we are going through, that is also condition phenomenon. Therefore, is impermanent, transitory. Therefore, is changing. So it can't be same all the time. It will also pass. The storm that we are facing will be also passed, as many storms has passed in our life. When you are in the middle of a storm, sometimes you feel that this storm might never finish. Storm might never be gone. But we realize the storm comes and goes. Similarly, no matter how challenging, difficult situation is, or the way, no matter how we feel it, but the fact and reality is got to change. It can't remain unchanged. So when you are aware of that, it gives you a little bit of hope. It helps you to be a little bit more positive, where you feel, nothing's going to change. Instead of feeling that, you begin to see things can change, things are changing. It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time, and only is a matter of only how big the change is, but it got to change. It can't remain same. And so therefore, again, meditating on that, can be beneficial and helpful. And sometimes, if we don't meditate on our everyday life, every day, or most time, when you are in a situation itself, it might not be so effective when you're trying to meditate, and only at that time. That is what happened to us. Normally we don't meditate, and then something happens and try to meditate, and our meditations or practice is not powerful because we don't do it normally, and then it is not so effective. But if someone has been reflecting, contemplating, and meditating on that impermanent nature of things, then when things happen, when the moment you go into that reflection, contemplative meditation, then you really begin to see the changes. You can feel the changes. You can feel the changes. You can see, you can feel it. And then when you feel the changes, then you don't become as negative. And it doesn't make your mind as negative. And it doesn't make your mind as down, low, Instead, it lifts you, because you begin to see the light at the end of tunnels. Because before, you can't see the light at the end of tunnel. All you see is darkness. But when you begin to see and feel that, then you begin to see and feel, the light at the end of tunnels. And that gives you hope, make you more hopeful, positive, So again, that is another important factor, It is because our memory is so short, our human memory is so short, sometimes even though we have gone through a more challenging problem than this one in the past, and we have dealt with that, still at this point, we feel this is the most difficult challenge that I've ever faced, This is the worst thing that has happened in my life. That's how we feel it in that moment. Even though a lot of things happen much more worse than that in the past, and we have overcome it. We have overcome it. Some of those, it took more time to overcome it, heal from that. Some of them were able to overcome it and heal from that more quickly. There is a difference, some of them more time, but we have done that. We have done that. And so will this. We can overcome it. We can heal from this. And we can overcome this. And so again, based on our own experience of the past, trusting and believing in yourself, your ability to heal yourself from this, no matter how strong we feel in that moment, and that we can overcome it, as long as we don't lose the hope, as long as we don't give up, as long as we continue to, put effort to heal from it and to overcome it, But that is how we feel, Even with the physical pains, like when you have very bad fever, it feels like this is the worst thing that could, happen to you. Even though that fever is just a fever, they are instant like that, I feel, oh, I've never experienced so badly like than this one. But actually, if you really reflect, you have experienced much more worse than that in the past. But in that moment, that's how you feel it, that's how you feel it. Even with just small things, like even just like a fever, when you have a bad fever, bad headache, it feels like this is the worst thing that happened to me, in terms of pain, physically due to illness. But that's how you feel it. But if you really reflect, and so that's how we feel, and so being aware that even though I'm feeling this is the worst thing that happened, but it's just my feeling. It's not the reality, it's just my feeling. Just being aware of that. That can also help, because you think, that's not the truth. That's not reality. It's just because I feel that way doesn't mean that, because that's how I felt before as well, but that wasn't the case. So therefore, again, that can be beneficial and helpful in that, by seeing in that way. And another, I think, I think it was Marga who shared her experience of how she was, it helped her thinking of present of your teachers, gurus, Buddhas, enlightened beings, supporting and being with their guiding you. So again, that is also another, and as I shared about some of the stories about the Tibetans in Tibet who were in prison and tortured, and how that helped them to overcome that. So again, that is another thing. Sometimes we lose hope in ourselves, ability in ourselves. Sometimes we lose not only hope and ability in our own ability and hope to fix the problems, to overcome the challenge and difficult. Sometimes we might even lose hope that any human being can fix it. Sometimes we might even lose no human being can fix this problem. No human being can help me to overcome this challenge, the difficult, and that can be very devastating when then you feel you cannot fix yourself, because you don't trust and believe in your own ability in yourself. And neither you have trust and belief any other human being can do with that. If that happens, then you become very hopeless, become very discouraged. In those cases, then understanding and belief, the enlightened beings, the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, all these enlightened beings, always there to guide us, to support us, to help us, feeling the presence of them can be uplifting, beneficial, helpful, And that has been a lot of help in every religions, Even whether you believe in creator God, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam or another, many of them and many of the practitioners, when everything's break down and when they feel all gone, only trust and hope they have in the God. And that trust and belief in that God can help them, has been something that keep them from totally losing everything, losing every hope. They still have some hope because of that. Of course, in Buddhism, we don't have same concept of creator God, creator Buddhas, but definitely we still have also Buddha, unconditional loving compassion of all sentient beings, all knowing presence, and always there to be benefit and help. And so, again, from our side, if we create the right cause and condition, there's always ready to receive the blessing, receive the help and benefit. And so, again, with that kind of, when you have something like that, then you can still feel some hopeful and still positive and not totally lose everything and become so totally discouraged and totally hopeless. So again, I think it has been very beneficial and helpful for so many practices in the past. And if we can rely on that, it can also be very beneficial to us in such challenging, difficult times. If you have that trust, of course, if you don't have trust, then of course it doesn't help. Having the belief and trust in that can be again another powerful tools to us to be more hopeful and still hopeful and still positive. And so, I think religious started because of that, to some extent at the very beginning, due to fire, earthquakes, natural disasters, when people didn't know how to deal, they didn't have it, then, believing there is something powerful, mighty ones that can help us, all of that. And so having that hope in that is the way it's kind of started for many of them, And so basically that whether there is Almighty that is going to help and free you from whatever problem or not is a one different matters. Is a different matter or something, discussions. We believe it, not believe it, is something else. But having that kind of belief is a tool, them to be hopeful. Is a tool, is something that is a tool that help them to be positive and not give up and not be so discouraged and negative. And so it helps in that way. It helps in that way. Whether the Almighty is going to really come and fix the problem, it doesn't matter. But because of that belief and trust, it helps your mental state to be hopeful, positive, and not give up. And that's what is all about, finding different tools, isn't it? It's about how to find different tools. And if any tools help, why not take it? The tool can be sometimes imaginations, but even these imaginations, if it helps our mind to be more positive, calm, helpful, why not take it? And so so when those difficult situations and painful situations arises in our life, for most of ordinary beings, that can destroy their spirit, that can destroy their spirit, that can make them very bitter if they don't have the tools to deal with that, very angry, very angry, very negative, very negative, it can make us like that if we don't have the right tools to deal with that. And so it can make, most of the people, when they don't have tools, it's normal. It lead to that kind of situations or feelings, So again, trying to learn the tools to overcome the anger, to overcome the bitterness, learning all the tools, meditations, different tools, different meditations, and to deal with that, so that when that happens, we have the tools to deal with that bitterness, that anger, so that it doesn't remain, that we don't hold on them and make our life miserable, so that we don't hold on those anger. First of all, best is through our practice meditation, not allow such anger and bitterness and such negative thoughts to arise at all. But even we cannot stop from them arising because we don't have strong practice and meditations, and we haven't reached that point, because we haven't progressed as much at this point. Even if arises, then again, through applying different meditation, the antidote, we try to reduce them. We try to reduce the intensity of that anger and bitterness. We try to reduce the durations of holding on that anger and bitterness. Instead of holding for a long time, we learn to let it go as soon as possible. We learn to reduce the intensity of that, so it's not so intense, at the very beginning, And even we cannot, do that. If we are unable to do that, one thing is then turn the anger and frustration into something positive. Instead of directing the frustration and anger to any beings, which we are, most time our anger and frustration is directed towards another being whom we blame for the situations. Instead of blaming to that being and being angry and upset, we can direct the anger and frustrations towards the situation itself to change the situations. Not to the persons, not to any beings, but towards the situation itself. So that when you are frustrated and angry with that situation, you are so then you really want to change that situations. Not the persons, but the situation itself. If you're angry and frustrated with the situation, then that means you are not happy with that. That means you want to change the situations. And so direct all the energies towards changing the situation instead of directing all these negative energies towards another being. So that is how we can channel our anger and frustrations. Despite, of course, if we don't have to have anger and frustration, that will be the best. Not to have that at all. Try. But sometimes even trying our best, we cannot stop. Sometimes we cannot stop. And if that arises, then we direct and channel towards, not towards the being, but towards the situation itself. It's more healthy and positive than directing that and channeling that towards another being. So I think I will kind of stop here, and I will open for any questions anyone has, or anyone to share any, discuss or share anything related. Yes, please, Linda.
It's so nice to see you again. I saw you a few years ago in person. So this is so helpful to me right now. I had some eye surgery last week, and there was a bunch of confusion of information I wasn't given. So the result wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I was so frustrated, and I was trying to figure out what to do with that just sort of overwhelming energy I had. It was like somebody give me an answer to something. And I'm so clear of what you just shared. I did start out with saying to this woman, you didn't tell me how this was going to be. And then I kind of caught myself because I kept thinking I need a relationship with her because I have to have the second surgery tomorrow. And so I could feel myself as kind of pushing toward her and then being able to pull back. I started, because when I'm nervous, I don't breathe, I feel like. So I was trying to breathe and then say to her, I just need some answers. I just need some help. And then she sort of softened and leaned toward me and said, I'm so sorry you didn't get the information you wanted. And it was really, it only took like 5-8 minutes to get there, but it was like I could feel myself just wanting to blame her and then pulling back and realizing that wasn't going to help. So it's like I didn't have the structure in my mind that is what you're sharing, except now I can see that I brought my tools out to calm down both myself and her, so I didn't destroy the relationship. So this is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to know that you recognize that, and then you are able to kind of breathe in and take the gap, and before you started to just push it. So to have that gap, that is the very important part when we have those kind of negative emotions. Instead of responding, reacting immediately, we have to learn to take that gap, breathe it, and take time before it is beneficial. If I say this, if I do that, or it's not going to be beneficial. So you get that space to think that, if you learn to do that before responding and reacting immediately, because that's a lot of time, that's how we do it. So, and later we might regret it, but we don't have the space to really think about it long-term and all of that. And so that you get that space once you recognize and taking the breath, and then just that help you, and I think that is really good. And I think that's what we all should also learn to do, to give that space, before we respond with verbally or physically, and if you learn to give that space, then we will be able to make better judgment and better whether it's better to respond or not respond, and if we respond, how to respond, not respond. It will give you all this space to do that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any others? Does anyone has others to share? If not, we can do dedications. That's also fine.
I had a question. I don't know if it's too late, Heather.
No, it is not too late. Yes.
Hi, Geshe. It's so wonderful to see you as always.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it was one of your teachings. It probably was a while back when you talked about the Tibetan culture and how Tibetans often see their problems as opportunities. And I just think that's so interesting how different the Tibetan culture is from the Western culture, and how challenging it is for us in the West to wrap our minds around this and see life in a more positive light. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about kind of the Tibetan approach or perspective to life that makes it more pleasant and easier to understand these teachings.
Yeah, I think I did spoke about that last week, a little bit on last week. And I gave some examples, when we are having a parties or event, you know, there is big event, for example, outside and party, whatever celebration, whatever. If it started snow and rain, they will say, oh, it's wonderful. It's a good sign. It's auspicious. It's a sign that Nagas are happy. You know, it's an auspicious signs. So there is that. Normally we'll think, oh, it ruined our party, it ruined our events, celebrations. That will be our normal reactions. But in culture, there is that kind of, to everything, there is something like that, you know. Or it's so auspicious, it's a good sign. It's auspicious sign, it's a good sign, like that. And so there are a lot of that. And of course, Tibetan culture is very much influenced by the Buddhist teachings, you know. And so it all comes from these mind training teachings, you know. The mind training teaching is how to look everything more positively instead of looking everything as a negatively. If you look negatively, you feel negative. If you look positively, you feel positive, you know. And so you grow up hearing that. And so in your mind, when something happens, it naturally you feel, oh, it's auspicious. It's a good sign. It's auspicious signs, you know. And so there is that kind of saying in everything, as I mentioned, a few other examples that you give, you know. And I might not know all those different ways they do, you know. Probably the elder generation, the older generation, they will have all of this, you know. For younger generations, you know, we might not have everything that how they you know, but especially the older generations, so everything that happened, they have something positive to say about it and something positive to look at it, and that is how you feel it. And so I think, as I gave our example, the fire, you know, in India, you know, in not Tushita, I mean Bodh Gaya, you know, there was big pujas, you know, at one of the center, material project, you know, at Lama was one of the projects, and they were having a big event, you know, with so many monks and others doing a big pujas, you know, and tent, and then, you know, something happens, you know, because there were a lot of butter lamps, a lot of lamp lights, and then something caught fire, and the tent caught fire and destroyed so many expensive, all these tangas and everything, you know. But then, you know, everyone said, oh, it's a good sign, it's a prosperity, you know, it's a sign of, that is what normally they say, the fire go up, you know, not down, up. So it means prosperity is a sign of, so immediately the senior monks, sanghas that came in there told me, they started to say that, and then everyone started thinking, oh, it's a good sign, you know. And so that's how you feel it, you know. So that, like that, you know, instead of being so upset and who put the butter lamp or who didn't look after it, and you know, whatever, then we can find so many reasons to blame to someone and all of that, and be upset and bitter, all that. So it's so easy to kind of let it go, all of that. When you see something and say, oh, it's a good sign. It's a sign of progress. It's a sign of prosperity, you know. So yeah, those are just a few examples, and I gave about the example of other things, you know. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Dedications. May all beings everywhere plagued by the suffering of body and the mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy. By virtues of my merit, may no living creature suffer, commit evil, or evil fall evil. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see form and the deaf hear sound. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drink. May the poor find wealth, those who weep with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayer bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever disease there in the world, may they never occur again. May the fighting cease to be afraid and those bound be free. May the powerless find power and may people think of defeating each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. And I think there's a lot to think, there's a lot to digest, and there's a lot to contemplate. And if you find any of, from all so much of talking and discussions, if you find even in one small part that you find helpful, beneficial, and then try to apply as much as possible and see, how whether it's helping, benefiting or not, So you do the experiment now. You know how to do the experiment. Do the experiment yourself and find out yourself as it is helpful or not, as it is supposed to be helpful. Okay. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.